Welcome to another episode of Trial Site News. Today we're going to be covering a follow-up article written on our website at trialsitenews.com. And this story is from investigative journalist Sonia Elijah, who originally brought this bombshell to light back in June of this year. Now, in her original article, she revealed major concerns with Pfizer's vaccine batch integrity, as well as the race to authorize. And so, for today's episode, we're going to be covering her investigation into further leaked emails with specific references made about the European Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, who herself has been embroiled in controversy. And so, from Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and our episode is starting right now. So, back in June, we here at Trial Site News published a bombshell investigative report on the leaked European Medicine Agency, or the EMA, emails and other Pfizer-related confidential reports, which exposed concerning facts in the run-up to the authorization of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. And it revealed the following. First, a politically driven race between key regulators in the rush to authorize the vaccine. Second, by late November 2020, regulators including the US FDA, European Medicines Agency, Health Canada, and the UK's MHRA were all aware of the significant loss of RNA integrity of the commercial batches of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine compared to the clinical ones. This was classified by EMA as a major objection along with observed physical particles, which were classified as impurities. And then you had a leaked 26th of November PowerPoint presentation of a meeting between Pfizer-BioNTech and the EMA revealing how this major objection was shockingly, quote, resolved. Rather than fixing the problem, the RNA integrity specification was simply lowered to 50%, therefore allowing half of all mRNA molecules in the commercial batches being allowed to be truncated or not intact. And then finally, you had the potential implications of the RNA integrity loss in terms of safety and efficacy, which were unknown. Now, for the subject matter for today, Sonia's report focuses on further leaked emails with specific reference made to the European Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, and the unusual extent she was willing to go in corralling member states in avoiding the use of Article 5.2, their National Emergency Use Authorization for the COVID-19 vaccines, and instead go with an EU Conditional Marketing Authorization, or CMA. As Sonia in her article put it, quote, shines light on other leaked EMA-sensitive documents. The 24th November 2020 Quality Office CMC observations presented by the BWP and Rapporteur's Rolling Review Assessment report revealing more evidence which supports the major objections discussed in the original Trial Site News report. It looks at unredacted versions of Pfizer vaccine contracts and the EC's advanced purchase agreement signed in November 2020 with Pfizer and BioNTech for the development, production, priority purchasing options, and supply of successful COVID-19 vaccine for EU member states. So let's back up a bit here and look at the figurehead of all this drama, Ursula von der Leyen. She is no stranger to scandal and has been under intense public scrutiny over her private negotiations of a multi-billion euro vaccine deal, the EU's biggest contract, via secret texts and phone calls made with Pfizer's CEO, Albert Bourla, contravening the Commission decision for a steering board to quote, provide guidance throughout the evaluation process. Furthermore, she refused to grant public access to the secretive text messages exchanged between Bourla and herself, when called to do so. A European Court of Auditors published an alarming report which stated that, quote, we asked the Commission to provide us with information on the preliminary negotiations for this agreement. Scientific experts consulted and advice received, timing of the talks, records of the discussions, and details of the agreed terms and conditions. However, none was forthcoming. The fire has also been heating up for Pfizer's Bourla when he was called to testify before the European Parliament's Special Committee on COVID-19 to face questions over those secretive vaccine deals, but at last minute pulled out from facing the committee. Can't say I'm surprised. The original Trial Site News investigative report highlighted the enormous pressure exerted by the European Commission on the EMA to grant CMA under a highly accelerated timeline. An email from Noel Wathian, who is EMA's former deputy executive director, was published, which revealed a rather tense teleconference call with the European Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, which was, quote, at times even a bit unpleasant. Wathian states that a delay of several weeks was not easily acceptable for the European Commission, or the EC, going on to say how political fallout seems to be too high, even if the technical level at the member states could defend such a delay in order to make the outcome of the scientific review as robust as possible. And here we see Hilda Boone of the EMA talking about von der Leyen in an email discussing the issue of the National Article 5.2 versus CMA. In it, Hilda said the following. The commissioner said that since EC made a commitment to the member states and EP that the vaccines will be available to all member states at the same time, and that therefore it will be important that member states will not be forced to use that national route due to delays in the formal approval procedure. She also said that she will be prepared to call relevant health ministers personally to avoid the use of Article 5.2. Now, why is this important? Well, Article 5.2 of Directive 2001/83 states, member states may temporarily authorize the distribution of an unauthorized medicinal product in response to the suspected or confirmed spread of pathogenic agents, toxins, chemical agents, or nuclear radiation, any of which could cause harm. In other words, it is the equivalent of the emergency use authorization at the member state level. It can be done very quickly because the medicinal product doesn't need to go through the standard national authorization process. Sonia Elijah in her article wrote that an expert on EU law explained to Trial Site News the downside of member states using Article 5.2 is that it would have given rise to competition amongst member states, leading to an unequitable access or distribution of the COVID-19 vaccines, particularly for those member states who preferred to wait for the EU's CMA, which typically takes longer since it's supposed to follow a controlled and robust framework providing safeguards. A European Union CMA helped ensure that the vaccines would have been available to all member states at the same time, which was one of the objectives of the EU COVID-19 strategy. However, the obvious question should be asked. Could there have been further reasons why von der Leyen was desperate for the member states to avoid Article 5.2, so much so that she was willing to call every relevant health minister herself? Well, here we see Noel Wathian, the former deputy executive director of the EMA, writing that, quote, what is new in my view is that she clearly identifies the two vaccines that could be approved before the end of the year. There are still issues with both. The CMC seems to be a concern for the Pfizer-BioNTech, and the rolling review for Moderna just started giving less time to review. Since the first option still is to aim for a CMA rather than Article 5.2, coupled or not with an Article 5.3, we are trying to make the CMA process as adapted as possible to the pandemic situation. And finally wrote that we will be in the hotspot for the first vaccines. The pressure should be much less, certainly, with this level of efficacy and on condition that there are no major quality and safety issues. Now, Article 5.3, referenced in this email, states that member states shall lay down provisions in order to ensure that marketing authorization holders, manufacturers, and health professionals are not subject to civil or administrative liability for any consequences resulting from the use of a medicinal product. The fact that Wathian points out that an Article 5.2 can be coupled or not with Article 5.3 raises the important question whether member states would have had the option to not give indemnity to the marketing authorization holders, which in this case would be BioNTech, and the manufacturers, BioNTech and Pfizer. Now, given what we know about the leaked Pfizer contracts made available by the nonprofit consumer advocacy organization, Public Citizen, this pharmaceutical company has seemingly bullied countries into silence. They can go after sovereign state assets under the waiver of sovereign immunity and enjoy full indemnity, exemption from legal liability that may result from their product. In fact, it is the purchaser who is made liable on their behalf. This means governments have had to pay compensation to citizens who have suffered from a vaccine adverse event, not the vaccine manufacturer. This screenshot, for example, taken from the unredacted version of the Advanced Purchase Agreement, or the APA, between the European Commission, or the EC, acting on behalf and in the name of member states, Pfizer Inc. and BioNTech, collectively as the contractor, was signed in November 2020, which is around the same time the leaked EMA emails were generated. It states that each participating member state shall indemnify and hold harmless the contractor, their affiliates, from and against any and all liabilities incurred relating to harm, damages, and losses arising from or relating to the use and deployment of the vaccines. However, there is a problem here. Information posted on the EC's website states that under an EU Conditional Marketing Authorization, or CMA, liability is with the holder of the marketing authorization, which in this case is BioNTech. This directly conflicts with the APA that the EC signed with Pfizer and BioNTech for 200 million vaccine doses priced at 15.5 euros per dose, a month before the CMA was granted. It is noteworthy that the EC published a heavily redacted version of the identical APA that we just talked about, with any section related to indemnity, liability, or simply considered sensitive being censored. They didn't want the public to know. Period. Another important point to consider when it comes to Article 5.2 versus an EU CMA is that given some European countries mandated the vaccine for adults, at-risk age groups, and certain job sectors, it is highly unlikely that those member states would have been able to do that with an unauthorized medicinal product, which these vaccines would have been classified under Article 5.2. Is the picture getting clearer here? So to refresh everyone's memory, let's go back to the CMC issues that were written about. Wathian's November 2020 email, which raised several concerning points, specifically said, there are still some issues with both. CMC seems to be a concern for the Pfizer-BioNTech, and the rolling review for Moderna just started giving less time to review. So it needs to be seen if all of this can be sorted out on time, whilst not compromising the robustness of the review. The original Trial Site News report discussed what those CMC issues were with Pfizer-BioNTech, particularly the loss of RNA integrity in the commercial batches and the unknown visible particles observed. Wathian tellingly states that there are still issues, speaks to the notion that those issues were not solved, but had been ongoing. Wathian's concern of compromising the robustness of the review because of the need to authorize on time is emphasized. This worry of speed over safety is reflected in other leaked emails, particularly by Wathian. The report also contained a leaked email from Veronica Jerkel, EMA's head of Pharmaceutical Quality Office, where she outlined the 3 agreed major objections and the conclusion of the BWP regarding the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Her email was sent on November 24th, the same day as the BWP presentation. Now, these are a series of screenshots of the actual leaked BWP PowerPoint presentation, which Jerkel references in her email entitled EMA Quality Office CMC Observations. This screenshot, for example, presents wide-ranging data which back up one of the major EMA objections in reference to the significant drop in percentage RNA integrity between the clinical and commercial batches. It is noteworthy that batches from Pfizer's Andover and Puurs, Belgium sites were reported as having significantly lower percentage RNA integrity than batches provided by BNT or BioNTech and Polymum. And here we see a screenshot taken from the unredacted APA signed by the EC. It specifies that the majority of Europe's vaccine supply will come from Pfizer manufacturing sites in Puurs, Belgium. This is concerning given the data shows that percentage RNA integrity of batches from that site were the lowest at 55% compared to other sites. And then, in this screenshot, we see the acceptance criteria of various BNT 162b2 drug product lots. Drug product refers to medication in its marketed form, including its fillers, coloring agents, and other active or inactive agents. The acceptance criteria for the emergency supply is greater or equal to 50%, which just so happens to be below the batches with the lowest percentage RNA integrity supplied by Pfizer Puurs. Now, all of this is important as the CMC involves defining manufacturing practices and product specifications that must be followed and met in order to ensure product safety and consistency between batches. Given the data shown here, it is evident that there were significant CMC issues regarding the inconsistency of the percentage RNA integrity between batches, which is reflected in the leaked EMA emails and documents. Particularly concerning here is that the manufacturer, Pfizer-BioNTech, claimed that the efficacy of the drug product is dependent on the expression of the delivered RNA, which requires a sufficiently intact RNA molecule. Now, Sonia Elijah, in her article, wrote that it is baffling how lowering the specification down to 50% was potentially how this problem objection was solved. According to a leaked rapporteur's rolling review assessment, revised report date 25th November 2020, compiled by the CHMP and the PRAC rapporteurs, found that the current acceptance criteria particularly troubling. The report states that no characterization data on RNA integrity and truncated forms is presented, and the potential safety risks associated with truncated RNA isoforms are not addressed. This is especially important considering that the current DS and DP acceptance criteria allows for up to 50% fragmented species. Now, truncated, shortened by missing either top or end section RNA, is defined as product-related impurity, and the fact that potential safety risks arising from this fragmented species are not addressed is highly alarming. Reference is made to the current DS and DP acceptance criteria, which implies that it was not always set at that level and perhaps it had been changed or lowered. So the question then is why? Could it have been that process 2, the manufacturing of the commercial batches, was just not replicable at the same specification level to the clinical batches, the smaller scale, of process 1? Therefore, a lower standard was set in order for CMA to be granted. Well, we here at Trial Site News communicated with the EMA regarding the content of the leaked emails and documents, and the EMA's press office gave us a prompt response, which has now been published in its entirety, which I will now read to you. They said that the investigation of the published material revealed that the correspondence was manipulated by the perpetrators prior to publication. Not all of the documents were published in their integral original form and may have been taken out of context. Whilst individual emails were authentic, data from different users were selected and aggregated, screenshots from multiple folders and mailboxes were created, and additional titles were added by the perpetrators. These documents do not present a full picture of the assessment of Comirnaty, the COVID-19 vaccine developed by BioNTech and Pfizer. They show the situation up to the beginning of December 2020 when the hack was discovered, but do not mention the considerable amount of additional data, information, and clarifications submitted by BioNTech Pfizer up to 21 December 2020, the day when EMA's Committee for Human Medicines, or CHMP, gave its recommendations to grant a marketing authorization for this vaccine. Comirnaty works because the mRNA it contains provides instructions for producing a spike protein which triggers an immune response. Its efficacy, therefore, depends on the presence of suitable amount of intact mRNA, which is known to be relatively unstable. What the documents show is how the assessment of any medicine works. Following scrutiny of the data submitted by the company, the CHMP had questions about the integrity of mRNA and raised them formally as a major objection. This is an integral part of the assessment of any medicine. If major objections remain unresolved, they preclude the granting of the marketing authorization. In this case, the company addressed the issues raised satisfactorily and subsequently supplied the required information and data after beginning of December 2020, which allowed EMA to move towards a positive opinion for this vaccine. The public assessment report of Comirnaty summarizes the conclusions of the CHMP on this issue and details the steps taken during the marketing authorization procedure of Comirnaty, as well as the obligations placed on the marketing authorization holder to carry out additional studies to closely monitor the pharmaceutical quality of vaccine. These obligations were also included in the product information published at the time of the CHMP opinion. Even in a public health emergency as COVID-19, there has always been consensus across the EU to not compromise standards and to base any recommendation on the available scientific evidence on a vaccine safety, pharmaceutical quality, and efficacy, and nothing else. Authorizations are only granted when the evidence shows convincingly that the benefits of vaccination are greater than any risks posed by a vaccine. And there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth. Now, naturally, we here at Trial Site News will keep digging. And as ever always, we'll keep you posted on what comes next from all of this craziness. And so, from Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and I will see you all next time.